Well, I'll just start on with my roommate voice. So this morning I'm getting ready, got my hair after power hours. And I was thinking, oh, am I going to get a text from Joe saying we can't be there? But of course, it was isolated and it was a telephone pole incident in my neighborhood. And of course, he was right on it when I got here. So it's like 1,100 customers out, because that's kind of, as I've gotten to know Joe, who he's all about. So welcome, Joe, and welcome to all of you. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to Rue for hosting us. I love all the natural light here, and if you have a chance, definitely take a tour with Kate Simmons after, because walking through the place really helps you understand exactly what they do and all the potential that's here for me. So let's start with the early Joe, shall we, Joe?
Sure.
So you grew up in Maine. Tell us where and what that was like.
Yep, so I grew up in Jay. That's a mill town in central Maine. Went to high school there. Not a lot of activity in the 80s. I'm a little old going on, but, really what we, as a kid, we would leave in the morning in the summertime, and my mother would tell me to come back when the street lights came back on, and that's what we did. We played all day long. And I grew up in a neighborhood where we had a ton of kids, my age, and it was really fun because we all liked to play sports. So year-round, we would play basketball, baseball, football. It was just, great teamwork, and, obviously, in Maine, this is basketball tourney week, right? Playing at the Augusta Civic Center in the tournament was always a pleasure and a lot of fun for us. But we like to compete, and being a small mill town, sports was really, if you think about it, was a lot of the community. The football teams and the basketball teams were followed very closely by everybody that worked in the mill.
Right. So the high school basketball tournament is this weekend, 10 games. They're already ridiculously talking about moving it on Saturday. Yeah. What's your take on that?
We live in Maine.
Like, let's go, right?
I saw Bill Green and his boots, and I had my Halloween boots on before I came in. I changed.
Same.
I do think, in Maine, we're used to the weather. You're going to get 6 to 10 inches of snow. It should be dry and fluffy in the Augusta area. Anyway, so I wouldn't, I think we live here and we need to embrace the weather that we do have.
Couldn't agree more. So you played sports in high school, and what are some lessons from sports that you take with you today?
So I think one is I love to compete. Always have. Obviously like to win. I hate losing at anything that I embark on. But I'd also say that playing sports gives you a great self-awareness. I think we all, as kids, my dream was to be a professional baseball player, and really understanding that wasn't going to be in the cards for me. As much as I played, baseball during the summer and through the winter months, you recognize what your strengths and your weaknesses are. And I think understanding who you are and what your abilities are really help put it in perspective for you as you move forward in life. And I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned or reflect on with my son, who was a pretty good athlete on his day as well.
And I was disappointed to learn that you never delivered a newspaper.
I never delivered.
Which I'm surprised you made it to the position that you're in today without having that in your background. But regardless, by the way, I do think there's a route open to Livermore Falls if you go on it. So, what was your first paying job?
So my first paying job was at Gould's gas station in Wilton. It was my father's best friend gas station. And back during that time, you actually had somebody that we pumped their gas motor, and you washed their windows, and you'd ask them if you wanted their oil checked, believe it or not. And I really enjoyed the summers there, a couple of summers that I worked there, and just getting to meet the customers of the gas station and knowing their routines. You see the same people, every weekend, and it was a lot of fun.
And so for college, you headed down to South Portland.
I did. I went to Southern Maine Vocational Technical Institute. At the time, it's now Southern Maine Community College. And ironically enough, after I got my associate's degree there, coming back to Maine, I'm now on the foundation board for community colleges, which I'm really excited about, because that's something that's obviously near and dear to my heart, seeing, the ability to go to a 2-year accredited school and be able to move up in an organization and get and further your education is critically important for all of us.
If I were SMCC, you would be in every single brochure, right? I mean, you're an amazing success story, and the community college system here in Maine is great and makes sense for so many people, and certainly super affordable now.
Yeah.
So your first job out of school then?
So my first job was I worked at Fairchild Semiconductor across the way here as a computer programmer on second shift. And for me, I did that for about 6 months, and that was about as much as I could handle. It was it was a good first job. It gave me good exposure to what it would be like to be inside most of the days and just doing programming work. But for me, I want to use my hands and my brains together, not just my brain.
So Greg, oh no, there I am. Hello. So then you get to CMP. How do you get there for your first stint?
So my first stint, my best friend from college started working at Central Maine Power right out of Photech school, and he said, "Hey, they've got some openings. I really love it here. I get to work outside, working on some really cool equipment. You should apply." And so I did, and started with Central Maine Power in 1987. It was the day after. It was the day before the April Fool's Day flood. So my second day on the job, I was watching the Kennebec River in Gardner just, burst at the seams into the Farmingdale substation. And at that point in time, we had to de-energize that substation because the floodwaters were so high. And I questioned my decision to come to work for Central Maine Power at that point when I watched, a gentleman get into an aluminum boat with a switch stick in really rapid current and really de-energize that substation remotely by opening up the single blade disconnects, which was amazing to me. Scary, but amazing.
Wow. So then you had your first opportunity to advance at CMP at a time when the company was really struggling. Yeah. Tell us about that, Joe.
So in 1994, Central Maine Power was going through some very difficult financial times, and I think it was the first time and the only time since that the company went through a layoff. And as they went through the layoff, at that time I was in the union, and when you go through a layoff in a union, you do it by seniority. So being fairly young in the union, I was on the chopping block. So I had a choice. I could either take the severance package, or I could relocate to another position in Wiscasset. And I was currently working in the Augusta facility. So the choice to me was very clear. I had a young child, had the opportunity to continue with a company that I loved, even though we were in unfortunate circumstances. But to go down to Wiscasset and actually get a promotion out of this, which led me to some other opportunities further down the line. So it was at least when I reflect on the decision, I'm very happy that I stayed with the company at that point.
It's pretty good to turn a layoff into a promotion, right?
Yeah,
so
fortunate.
That doesn't happen much. That's pretty strategic. So let's fast forward to 1998. Two big things happened: the ice storm and deregulation. What's that like for you?
So first of all, deregulation was a big effort in the company, and my role in that was to really set up the demarcation points between the assets in the substations and what was going to go to the generating company that was going to purchase those assets, and the assets that CMP would maintain. So that was a very important effort. And in the middle of that, we had the ice storm, which for 3 weeks, it was all hands on board, and really getting an opportunity to be out there, leading restoration efforts in the field with crews, doing the assessment of the damage, And while it was, if you look out like this morning, or last night when I drove home, it was beautiful out. The snow was out. What was even more beautiful was that there were 0 customer outages. And so greatly appreciate that. But the scenery in Maine when the weather hits is absolutely magnificent in the wintertime. But knowing that what we saw that morning when I got up during the ice storm and seeing that to get into my Jeep, I had to take a hammer to the windshield and the door to just unlock it and get it open to break the ice was just incredible. So I knew we were going to be in for a long haul, and it was. But it was very rewarding. I think it was a time when, a different time, a different era, obviously. 25 years ago, last month, as time flies. And obviously technology today and the expectations of our customers are much different than they were 25 years ago.
And you had an opportunity then to work under David Flanagan. So I'm sure many people here knew him and worked with him. So tell us what that was like and what you gained from him.
So David was an incredible leader. It was a great opportunity to really just kind of watch, and observe, how he interacted with folks and the relationships that he established, and the importance really of just understanding the issue and really working towards resolution of those issues. And so that was probably the biggest thing that I took away from David. At the end of the deregulation project, David had given me a book, and I happen to have the book right here. It was 1998, and it was, autographed by David. He said, "Welcome to the CMP management team. I hope this collection of essays on leadership will be of value to you." So, being a mentor, David was always thinking about how do I, ensure that the future leaders of the company, get the right exposure, whether it be project assignments or leadership opportunities, but just, again, just the opportunity to think about, a forward approach of just creating leadership and succession plans.
So I have so many questions for you, so I'm going to jump ahead.
Sure.
To card number 4, and let's talk about, oh my gosh, you left Maine.
I did.
Yeah. So you took a job with CMP where you were in New York part a week, but then you actually made a decision to leave the company and go work for Eversource.
Yes. So in 2010, I had been a manager of the Portland Service Center and served all of the 100,000 customers here in the greater Portland area. I had an opportunity to take a position, a senior level position as a director of system operations, which would include running the control centers, excuse me, from both Maine and New York, NYSEG, New York State Electric Gas, and Rochester Gas and Electric, and the Central Maine Power Control Room, and then substation operations. So if I think about it, it's really the backbone of the electric grid. It's not the distribution system, but it's the substation transmission group and just the control center running the day-to-day operations. And for me, that was exciting. It was it took a lot of, I think for me, it was a courageous step to determine, in 24 years at that point in time in my career, I'd just been in Maine. And the opportunity to understand how another utility, even though it was a sister company, was run and get to understand the people and the systems in place and just the T&D system in New York was too good to pass up. So I did that. And after 4 years of doing that, and I spent a lot of time in New York just understanding, because I felt very comfortable in Maine with the leadership team that we had in place under me. Then fast forward to 2014, and I get a call from a recruiter asking me if I'd have any interest in moving to a utility further south. And I said, no, probably not. I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I've been at the company for 28 years. And we hung up, and a week later I get another call. Well, they'd really like to talk with you. And I said, all right, what's it going to hurt to talk to a company? And so I talked with them. And what I understood from our conversations was that they were looking to really do some organizational change management in New Hampshire. And the position was a vice president of operations. And for me, being in operations my whole career, it sounded like a great opportunity to go down there and learn the system, learn how they operated. But what really also excited me and intrigued me about the position was that, at the time, it was part of Northeast Utilities, and Northeast Utilities had, the Boston grid and also had some of Connecticut, most of Connecticut, as a matter of fact. So now I'm going to get to understand how New Hampshire runs, how Boston runs, and Cape Cod, and also how, Connecticut runs. So I took the opportunity and went down there, and I had a playbook in Maine. I knew what we were doing. When I went down to New Hampshire, I thought, oh my God, I've stepped back in time. We had a mainframe OMS system in 2014. Mainframe. It was embarrassing in some respects.
New Hampshire.
Yeah, so very, you live free or died. But it was, and they can trouble calls after hours. There was no 24-hour coverage. The line workers would go home at the end of their shift, and they would have a pager, and the call center would page them when there was troubles. And they had, the supervisors really weren't connected to what was going on after hours or on the weekends. So in February of 2014, on Valentine's Day, my wife and I moved down to the Homewood Suites in Manchester, New Hampshire for 3 months. And, God bless her, because she was very supportive of that stay. Because I told her, in order for me to get an understanding of what was going on, we're committed. We're not going back to Maine on the weekends. I need at least 3 months to kind of get to know the people and get to know the system and understand how the organization operates, and really determine, what steps that I need to make to change the organization and meet the expectations of, the COO and the CEO. So we did that. I learned a ton in that period of time. So I would say, from a leadership perspective, if you have the opportunity to step out and do something different, I think, for me, it was very rewarding. And I probably wouldn't be in the position that I'm in now if I hadn't done that. And, what I learned in New Hampshire about how they operated the system in Boston and other parts of the system was paying attention to the details. And, one of those efforts was really centered around, if you want to get better at reliability, you have to be focused on what happens every day. So one of the things that we did in New Hampshire was we implemented a daily reliability call at 8:30 every morning. We would review the previous outages that occurred on the system, and anything over 100 outages, 100 customers impacted, we would have an explanation of what happened. Did the system operate as designed, and what corrective actions do we need to take if it didn't? And we track those. So that was one area of focus that that I hadn't been exposed to previously, and on my return to Maine, it was one of the first things that we did.
Yeah, so you have a reliability call every morning at 8:30. So you missed it.
I missed it. So. And it was to be with you. But I will tell you, every morning we have probably about 80 to 90 folks on this call. It's all of our departments. It's our RegM department. It's our operations, engineering, safety, procurement. Everybody is really laser focused on how the system performed in the previous 24 hours. As a matter of fact, any outage that is over 500 customers, I get a text message. Doesn't matter what time of day or night, for whether it's the weekend or a holiday. Myself and the vice president of operations and the other directors in the area, I also get that text message. So this morning, unfortunately, I got the text.
Lisa's house is out.
She's out of power. And I can tell you that, it was a motor vehicle accident that caused the outage, and our crews are out there, and all power will be restored by 10:15.
All right. Well, everyone, let's stay till 10:15 so we can check on that. But I like what you talked about in all of your jobs. You learn from leaders and took the best parts of all of your learning to create your own style.
Yeah.
So you're back at CMP in September 2021. The company took a lot of shots with the whole billing situation that was heavily reported by a local newspaper.
That I understand.
Yes. So, so you come in and you've got a lot to do to repair the company's image. How do you get started?
Well, before I came back, I sent the leadership team a homework assignment. So I had a period of 2 weeks off where I was in between jobs from New Hampshire to Maine. And I sent the leadership team a homework assignment, and it was to read a book. And the book was called Extreme Ownership, How U.S. Navy SEALs Fight or Win. And I had read the book and the follow-up book, The Dichotomy of Leadership, by Jocko Willink and Lee Babin. But I wanted to set the tone coming back that my expectation that we would be holding ourselves accountable, that we would be transparent, and that we would understand, what our focus was, and that together as a team, we'll be able to accomplish, those goals. And so they probably thought I was a lunatic because I sent them a book. I hadn't been in the company for 8 years, and here I come back in, and the first assignment is to read a book. When the second assignment was on day 2, we were going to have a daily reliability call at 8:30. In those 2 changes, for me, how I think about things is if we pay attention to the details, if we do everything flawlessly, and we don't, that's for sure. I don't think any company does, but our objective is that if we pay attention to those details and we hold ourselves accountable for the results and the performance of the system, that everything else outside of that will take care of itself. We need to first focus on the fundamentals and the foundation about how we're operating and maintaining and constructing the grid. And so you'll always hear me talk about we need to build a smarter, stronger, and more resilient grid. Every time that our crews are out there working on the grid, or we're building a customer service system, it has to be better than what it was before. The investments that we make today on the grid will last us, 60, 80, maybe 100 years. And we need to be thinking about what climate change is going to do for those investments. So we need to be smart about how we do that. We need to also increase the intelligence on the system and bring that back to our control centers so that we can operate the system efficiently. As we think about, distributed generation, renewables interconnecting to the grid, more electrification of, heat for transportation. Information is a powerful tool, and we really need to ensure that from a grid operator perspective that we have all that information flowing into our control centers so that we can make intelligent decisions not only on how we operate the system every day, but what our future investments will be.
So as the new leader, did everyone read the book?
Yeah.
Like, are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Good. So you have a leadership team, and I assume there are some people you worked with before that were on the team, and you can come back. So talk to me about how your direct reports would describe working for you.
Oh, there's a few of them in the room today.
Well, maybe we should just hand them the mic.
I think we would describe me as driven, that I set high expectations for the team, that, I want to understand the issues. I want us to get them, out on the table as soon as we can. I don't want to be surprised.
Right.
I want us to work through everything together, because I know the earlier that we know about something, whether it be something that's not good or something that's very good, we want to be able to address any issues that aren't going well, but we also want to be able to celebrate what is going well and replicate that. So communication for me is critical, and that we all understand what's happening in the company. And part of how we do that is we do this monthly work plan meeting, and we talk about everything, all the activities that are going on in the company one day a month. All the departments will report out. And this, I think people, again, probably thought I was a little bit crazy when we talked about this, but it's about an 8 to 10 hour meeting. It starts at 8 a.m. in the morning. We've had some of these meetings run till 7 o'clock at night. But everybody goes through and talks about what's going on in their world for that month, and they get asked questions from other departments. And so for me, what that does is that just breaks down any silos that we have within our company, and that we're now communicating together. And that, especially coming off a pandemic and remote working, to me is critical, that people, now I have a face. When I start to have a face, I can have conversations with folks. And if I have an issue or I need help with something, I know who to go see, and I feel comfortable calling them or going to visit them in the office. So I think that's made a tremendous difference. And people look forward to. It's the best day of the month, I've heard, and the worst day of the month. They get a lot of information, and I think in the end, I think it just accelerates our performance.
Oh, I feel like I should try that. Yeah, it sounds like a really, really good idea. Now, give yourself a performance review. So your self-assessment. So what are you most proud of, and what do you need to work on?
So I'm most proud of our team and our accomplishments. I think if you think about the progress that we've made, with our leadership team and our employees, our employees are committed. There's no question about that. I see it all the time at all of the weather events that we have. But when I look over the course of the last 18 months, I think about the changes that we've implemented. We have a local Maine leadership team. And to go back to that point, when I came back, the leaders that were in place, I had not had any relationships with prior to. I knew who they were, but I didn't work directly with them. So inheriting the leadership team, all of them live here in the state of Maine, and they're doing a phenomenal job. And we get great support from our parent company, Avangrid, and the CEO there, Pedro Azagra. So I'm very, very pleased about the support that we're getting from Avangrid that we need. But I'm also very pleased with the performance and the accountability that our leadership team and our employees are really, how they're investing in that.
And what do you need to work on?
Patience. Patience. I think as we go through change, I think in any organization, when you're going through change, you want to always step on the gas and you want to accelerate it. And, for me, there was a lot of changes that I wanted to implement coming back. Just like when I was in New Hampshire, there were a lot of changes that I wanted to implement. But the pace of change is critically important, I think, as a leader. It can't be overwhelming. And I think as you look at your time and place, I always looked at when I entered into a new position, I had about 12 to 18 months before I felt comfortable in the role, and that the pace of change or implementation of change needed to occur strategically. So the work plan meetings that I talked about, we didn't implement them month 1. We didn't implement them until probably month 10 of my tenure. So it was important that we didn't overwhelm, from my perspective, overwhelm people with change, but that they understood that we were in this continuous improvement cycle, and that's how we got there.
Change management has to be one of the most challenging things for leaders. So I take your point about you got to pace yourself, for sure. Let's talk about rebuilding the customer relationship with the customer and your marketing campaign. So you put yourself right in the middle of that, really taking accountability for all your customers and the service that you provide. What was that like?
Very uncomfortable. I'll say doing a commercial and, understanding that I'd have to do that. I was looking at leadership. If I expect somebody to do something, I have to be willing to do it myself. And for me, as uncomfortable as that was, the strategy behind rebuilding our reputation was, to me, it's very easy to have a company name and not a face, and you're able to say bad things about that company. But I'm hoping, and my strategy is, and our strategy is that if you have a face with a company, you get to know those faces, that your opinion of the company will change. Our leadership team, our employees, they all work and play and live in the same communities that you do. So as they're out there in the worst weather conditions, and it's all hands on deck, it doesn't matter.
On Christmas.
On Christmas. It doesn't matter whether you're an office support person, booking hotel rooms, or in the cafeteria putting together lunches, bagged lunches for the crew so that they can be efficient during the course of the day. Everybody's in. And I think that's very critical to how we run our operation. And again, I couldn't be any prouder of how people just kind of come together and really focused on improving the outlook of the company. So for me, doing that was strategic in getting to know me, because I came back to the state. But then the next commercial was all of our employees. And if you've seen it, we shoot a commercial with every service center in our service territory and our employees out in front of the building. That's who we are. They're your friends and your neighbors.
They would make awesome print ads too.
Yes.
From words. I did that. And that would be less uncomfortable. I've read it itself. Okay. So we got a couple. First of all, I can't believe how fast time is flying by. But there's some important things. I have like three cards about the future of energy. But let's talk about the consumer-owned power company and the referendum. So give it a quick explanation and what's your take on it.
All right, so I'll give you my take. It's complicated. I would encourage everybody to really read and understand what this is all about. So this is how I look at it, and I'm looking through a biased lens in some respects, but I also look at it as a citizen of the state, and I look at the impacts of future generations of the state. And I'm a grandfather. I have 3 beautiful grandchildren, a 4.5, a 2.5, and a 9-month-old that I adore. And I look at my role in the company is to secure their energy future, to set them up for success. And so when I think about this referendum that's coming up, there's a few things that come to mind. So first, the cost. It's estimated to be about a $13.5 billion acquisition. That's a big chunk of money. Secondly, I also think about how it will be run. An elected political board with some appointed advisors that will have to hire an operating company, a for-profit operating company, to run the grid. Critical. Now, a for-profit operating company, elected political officials making those decisions on who gets to do that. And then lastly, it doesn't lower your electric bill. You still have to, maintain the grid. You're still going to have an employee base. So when you're asked or in conversations about government controlled power, I would ask those questions. So how do you expect to improve reliability? What's your plan? How do you expect to lower costs? What's your plan? And I think our role as a company, and I take that role very seriously, we are to provide safe, reliable, and affordable service to our customers. We're responsible for the delivery portion of your bill, not the supply portion.
Oh, yeah, so let's go into that. So it's really easy to say, oh, CMP, look at my electric bill, it's so high right now, but people don't really understand the difference. So about the delivery versus the supply versus the delivery. So can you explain that? And honestly, how do you explain that to customers? That's not easy.
It's not. So this all happened in 1998. Before deregulation came, Central Maine Power was a vertically integrated company. We owned the generation and we delivered, that electricity to everybody's homes. After 1998, we sold our generation assets, but as part of that deregulation, we were still required to bill all of our customers both the delivery charge and the supply charge for the generation. So to our customers, it probably didn't look any different than it did 2 years earlier when they got one bill, although there was a note on the bill that said delivery charge and supply charge. So over the course of time, the purpose of that deregulation was to increase competition and lower supply costs. So what has happened over time, I think we could all say that it really hasn't driven the cost down. We don't have a lot of competitors for standard offer service in the state. And we continually try to educate our customers on, the differences between our portion of the bill and the supplier portion of the bill. The third page of every customer's bill is the supplier portion. And so if there's any questions about what his supply costs are, standard offer, that's the page to look at. And for us, it's been about educating by sending letters out to our customers, emails, even U.S. postal mail, because believe it or not, about half of our customers, we don't have an email account for, so we will mail them.
Print ads.
Print ads, you're exactly right. And then for us also, we're out and about in our communities, and we're talking with senior center forums, whether it be Spectrum Generations or the Southern Area Made of Aging. We have now stood up a community relations organization in the last year, and we're out there talking with all of our communities about their bill. And we really, if people have questions about their bills, we want them to contact us. Give us a call, contact us, online, but contact us.
Do you think anyone brought their bill today? Because if they did, see Joe after. I know that you would walk them through it. Okay, Bill Green had a question. How different is the public power advocate's position than the old public utility days?
So again, I think, if I understand it correctly, it's really about a vertically integrated utility, before deregulation. And I would say that if we had stayed in that model, and some states have stayed in that model, where you have vertically integrated utilities, it is a regulated model. So just like for our company, when we want to increase rates, we have to go before the Public Utilities Commission and file. We go through a rigorous process. And what we have to do is ensure that, again, you'll hear me say this, safe, reliable, and affordable service. It's got to be just and reasonable. And as we think about what's happening to the grid today, it's a real challenge because everybody wants to have access to their phone, to their computers. We work differently, we learn differently, and if you think about the system that has been built over the last 100+ years, upgrades are going to be needed. And as we look at our strategy for building out the grid and ensuring that we're meeting those needs, it's very important that as we have bigger projects that are potentially coming into the state, we want to be in the forefront. When a company is thinking about moving to the state, we want to make sure that we give them the right information so that they can pick their location based on where it may cost them less to interconnect to the grid. We want to be a part of that process. And so we're working very closely with the governor's office to be part of that. We've had a lot of good initial conversations with companies that are now moving to Maine that we're able to help them with. So I think that's critical for us. But again, it's complex. And as we move into the future, I think people have to understand that the offset in electricity costs that you will be paying because of electrification efforts, you should see in other fuels that you're paying for.
So I did a really bad job with time management. So we have like 3 minutes left, and I
thought you did an excellent job.
Thank you. We have a million questions about the future of energy. So I hate to rush through them, but how are you and CMP preparing for the transition to renewable energy sources? And there were like 6 questions about electric cars. Yeah. So take those both quickly.
So the system, I told you, every day we talk about how the system performed. Our engineers are doing analysis on loads for different circuits. So we are preparing based on what we see for upcoming loads. And again, this gets back to why it's very important that folks that are moving into the state, for companies, that they contact us so we can give them the right information and manage the grid. Additionally, if you think about heat pumps and electrification of the heating industry, we had 80,000 heat pumps installed in the state. We want to have more of those, right, to help get us to a cleaner energy future. We're prepared. As we look at our system every day, we look at the loads on the system, and we prepare betterment projects to ensure the system is ready to meet that performance. As I mentioned, we build a smarter, stronger grid. So every time that we hang a transformer on a pole or put it on a pad in a subdivision, we're not putting the transformer sized to the existing load of that resident. We're sizing them, we're buying just 25 kVA transformers versus 10 kVA transformers. So we're preparing, because I don't want to put a transformer out there today and next year have to replace it because it doesn't meet the loading requirements of the household. So we're being thoughtful in our strategy and making sure that we're ready as the grid changes.
And is Maine ready for electric vehicles right now?
Yeah, I think Maine is ready for electric vehicles. I think, as we think about it, we have to use all the tools in our tool bag, right? We want to make sure that we continue to look for ways to be energy efficient. When we think about the cost of charging vehicles, we want to figure out, we want to look at time of use rates that will incent people to charge their cars, not all at 5 o'clock when they get home, but maybe at a later time of day when the peak load on the system is down. and that we're able to levelize that. So it can be done, but it needs to be done collaboratively. You know, we have to have stakeholder involvement, and part of that stakeholder involvement means that we have to listen as a company to what these companies are trying to accomplish, what the state is trying to accomplish. But as long as we have a seat at the table and we can have those conversations, we'll end up in a good place. It's the times when we don't have the seat at the table that usually end up in chaos.
So my apologies to anyone that submitted a question that I didn't get to. I feel bad about that because time is almost out. So I'm going to ask you one final question from Charlotte Warren, which is, what is your favorite part of being CEO of CMP? And then I'll follow it up with, what is your least favorite?
So my favorite part is this. Believe it or not, I'm always very uncomfortable in doing these things, but my favorite part is telling our story, right, to our customers and our stakeholders of the wonderful work that we're doing on the system every day, how we're adapting and how we're preparing the state of Maine for a clean energy future. I mean, it doesn't get any more rewarding than that. It's probably the most challenging time in the industry right now, and to be a part of that is just incredible. To be part of an incredible team, and have the support of our parent company and the CEO there, it's incredible. I don't know that I have a worst part of my job. I get up every day ready to go.
Yeah.
I think if you ask me how I unwind, I don't know if I unwind.
Yeah. I heard you mow your own lawn, though, so.
Last night I snowblowed my own driveway, and I like that. It gets me to think about something different than what's going on. But there's so much happening right now that just kind of understanding and thinking about strategically how all this is going to come together is critically important. And I think that, my experience is that no one person has the answer. It's going to take an effort from across all sectors to put us in a position that I think Maine deserves to be in. And again, as a grandfather, I'm just looking to make sure that we're good stewards of the state and we pass that good state of the system along to our grandchildren.
Well, I thank you so much for being here, Joe. It was great to get to know you through this process, learning things like you've never taken a sick day. You obviously lead by example. We have a mutual friend that I worked with in my previous life who told me when he worked with Joe at Eversource that days of the storm, Joe was the first one in and the last one to leave. And it's clear in how you run CMP and all the things that you've learned throughout your career to make you the leader that you are today. So we're really happy to have you back in Maine after the time in New Hampshire. And I thank all of you for being here, and we'll send you an email on our next event, which is coming up in April, and enjoy this beautiful day. The sun is out. It's great. So thank you.
Thank you very much, folks.